So far in our story, we've seen Eleanor, a seemingly ordinary librarian, secretly built a vast empire dealing in rare artifacts and treasures while her family remained oblivious to her double life. Her world turned upside down when she discovered an ancient map tied to the legendary Order of the Hidden Light, hinting at hidden realms and unimaginable power. As danger closed in, she enlisted the help of Marcus Hale, a former intelligence operative who uncovered her true identity. Torn between protecting her family and pursuing the map's secrets, Eleanor made the heart-wrenching decision to step into the unknown. Leaving her loved ones behind, she set off for a remote island where the map's coordinates pointed, a place that could change everything. Now, let's begin the part 2 of the story. The boat rocked violently as waves crashed against its hull, spraying icy salt water over the deck. Eleanor clutched the railing with white-knuckled hands, her breath visible in the frigid Arctic air. The journey had been grueling, hours of navigating treacherous waters under the cover of darkness, but now, as dawn broke over the horizon, the island finally came into view. Jagged cliffs rose like broken teeth from the churning sea, their surfaces slick with moss and shrouded in swirling mist. Atop the highest peak, ancient ruins loomed ominously, silhouetted against the pale light of morning. Beside her, Marcus adjusted his jacket, his sharp eyes scanning the shoreline. "Looks abandoned," he muttered, though his tone suggested caution rather than relief. "But don't let your guard down." Eleanor nodded, though her mind was elsewhere. She couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't alone, that unseen eyes were watching from the shadows. The map's symbols had led them here, but what awaited them on the island remained a mystery. Was it treasure? Knowledge? Or something far more dangerous? As the boat approached the rocky inlet, Eleanor caught sight of strange carvings etched into the cliffside, symbols identical to those on the map. Her pulse quickened. This was no coincidence. Whoever had created the map had been here before, leaving behind clues meant only for those worthy, or foolish enough to follow. Once ashore, the pair moved cautiously, their boots crunching against frost-laden stones. The air was unnaturally still, save for the distant cry of seabirds echoing through the fog. The ruins grew larger as they ascended the narrow path leading toward the summit, each step taking them deeper into the unknown. The structures were unlike anything Eleanor had ever seen. Massive stone slabs arranged in intricate patterns, covered in ivy and weathered by time. Yet despite their age, there was an eerie sense of preservation, as if the island itself refused to let them decay. At the heart of the ruins stood a towering archway, its surface adorned with glowing runes that pulsed faintly in rhythm with some unseen force. Eleanor froze, staring at the markings. They matched the sequence she'd deciphered back home, the cipher that had revealed the coordinates. But this wasn't just a doorway. It felt alive, humming with energy that resonated in her chest. "This is it," Marcus said quietly, his voice tinged with awe. "Whatever you're looking for, it's beyond this point." Eleanor hesitated, her instinct screaming at her to turn back. Yet something compelled her forward, a pull she couldn't resist. Reaching into her bag, she retrieved the obsidian mirror, golden compass, and crystal shard, the artifacts she'd collected over the years. Each piece seemed to hum in response to the archway's energy, vibrating softly in her hands. "Put them together," Marcus urged, stepping closer. "If these are components of whatever device this map leads to, now's the time to test it." With trembling fingers, Eleanor aligned the artifacts according to the map's instructions. The obsidian mirror reflected the rune's glow, the compass spun wildly before locking onto a fixed direction, and the crystal shard flared brightly, bathing the area in blinding light. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a deafening crack, the ground beneath them trembled, and the archway ignited with searing blue flames. A portal opened, not figuratively, but literally. Swirling vortexes of light and shadow stretched outward, revealing glimpses of otherworldly landscapes, floating cities suspended in starry voids, forests of crystalline trees, oceans of liquid gold. It was beautiful, and terrifying. "We found it," Eleanor whispered, her voice barely audible over the roaring winds emanating from the portal. This is what the Order of the Hidden Light was protecting." Marcus grabbed her arm, his grip firm. "We need to decide fast. Do we go through, or do we destroy it?" His question hung heavy in the air. Going through meant risking everything, stepping into a realm humanity might not be ready to comprehend. Destroying it meant erasing the chance to uncover its secrets forever. Either choice carried consequences neither of them could fully predict. As Eleanor stared into the swirling abyss, Fragments of her life flashed before her eyes. Mark smiling across the dinner table, Alex strumming his guitar, the quiet moments of joy she'd fought so hard to preserve. And then there were the darker memories, the sleepless nights, the paranoia, the sacrifices she'd made to keep her family safe. All of it had led her here, to this impossible crossroads. Before she could answer, a sound shattered the silence. A gunshot rang out, followed by the unmistakable click of multiple weapons being cocked. From the shadows emerged figures clad in black tactical gear, their faces obscured by masks. One of them stepped forward, lowering his weapon slightly as he addressed Eleanor. "You've done well to get this far," he said, his voice cold and devoid of emotion. "But the artifact doesn't belong to you." Eleanor's blood ran cold. She recognized him instantly. It was the man from the phone call, the one who'd warned her weeks ago. Somehow, they'd beaten her here. Marcus reacted first, shoving Eleanor behind him as he reached for his own weapon. "Run!" he shouted, firing a shot that ricocheted harmlessly off the attacker's armor. "Get through the portal." Panic surged through Eleanor, but she forced herself to move. Grabbing the artifacts, she sprinted toward the archway, the portal's light enveloping her as she crossed the threshold. Behind her, Marcus exchanged fire with the assailants, buying her precious seconds. Just as she passed through, she heard his voice one last time. "Find the truth, and finish what we started." And then, everything went white. When Eleanor opened her eyes, she found herself standing in a surreal landscape unlike anything she'd ever imagined. Towering spires of light pierced the sky, casting kaleidoscopic reflections across fields of luminescent grass. In the distance, a colossal structure loomed, a library unlike any other, its shelves stretching endlessly into the heavens. Etched above its entrance were words written in a language she somehow understood. "Here lies the knowledge of all worlds. Choose wisely." Her heart pounded as she took her first steps forward, clutching the artifacts tightly. Whatever lay ahead, she knew one thing for certain: the answers she sought were within reach. But at what cost? And would she ever see her family again? Eleanor's footsteps echoed softly as she approached the celestial library, each step stirring faint ripples in the luminescent grass beneath her feet. The air shimmered with an otherworldly energy, and the kaleidoscopic hues surrounding her seemed to pulse in rhythm with her heartbeat. She felt both infinitesimally small and profoundly significant, as though this place had been waiting for her across millennia. The entrance to the library was framed by towering columns of translucent crystal, their surfaces etched with intricate patterns that shifted and danced like living constellations. Above the threshold, the words "Choose wisely" glowed faintly, a warning, or perhaps a promise, etched into the fabric of this alien world. As Eleanor crossed the threshold, the atmosphere shifted subtly. The vibrant colors outside faded into a serene silver glow, bathing the interior in soft, ethereal light. Inside, the scale of the library defied comprehension. Shelves upon shelves stretched endlessly in every direction, forming labyrinthine corridors that vanished into infinity. Each shelf was lined with objects that seemed to defy categorization: books bound in materials she couldn't identify, orbs pulsating with inner light, scrolls inscribed with languages older than time itself. Some items floated midair, suspended by unseen forces, while others emitted gentle hums or faint whispers when she drew near. Her gaze fell on a pedestal at the center of the chamber, illuminated by a beam of light descending from the vaulted ceiling. On it rested a single artifact, a tome encased in a crystalline shell, its pages shifting and rearranging themselves as if alive. Eleanor instinctively reached for it, but before her fingers could touch the surface, a voice resonated throughout the space, deep and resonant yet oddly comforting. "You have come far, Eleanor," the voice intoned, reverberating through the library without origin. "But know this: knowledge carries weight greater than any treasure. Are you prepared to bear it?" She froze, her hand hovering inches from the tome. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice steady despite the tremor of uncertainty coursing through her. "I am the Keeper," the voice replied. "Guardian of this repository, curator of truths hidden from your kind. You stand now at the precipice of understanding, but beware, for not all truths are meant to be known." Eleanor swallowed hard, her mind racing. This was what she had risked everything for, the culmination of years spent chasing secrets, unraveling mysteries, and defying danger. Yet standing here, confronted by the enormity of what lay before her, doubt crept in. Was she truly ready? Could anyone be? "What happens if I open it?" she asked cautiously, her eyes locked on the shifting pages within the crystalline shell. The answers you seek will be revealed, the keeper responded. But so too will the questions you cannot unask. To gain knowledge is to lose innocence. To see the truth is to forfeit ignorance. Her thoughts turned to Mark and Alex, their faces haunting her even in this surreal realm. What would they think if they knew the lengths she'd gone to, the sacrifices she'd made? Would they understand, or would they see her as someone consumed by ambition, blinded by curiosity? And then there was Marcus. His final words echoed in her mind, "Find the truth, and finish what we started." Had he known the cost of stepping through the portal? Or had he simply trusted her to make the right choice? Summoning her resolve, Eleanor straightened her posture and addressed the keeper. "I didn't come here for power or wealth," she said firmly. "I came because I believe humanity deserves to know the truth, no matter how difficult it may be. If this knowledge can help us, if it can protect us, then I'll take the burden." For a moment, silence filled the library. Then the crystalline shell around the tome dissolved into motes of light, leaving the book suspended in the air before her. Its cover bore no title, no markings, only a smooth, reflective surface that mirrored her own visage back at her. Tentatively, she reached out and opened it. The instant her fingers brushed the pages, the room erupted in cascading visions. Scenes unfolded before her eyes, vivid and overwhelming. Civilizations rising and falling, technologies birthing utopias only to collapse under their own hubris, wars waged over fragments of forgotten wisdom. She saw glimpses of the Order of the Hidden Light, not as guardians of knowledge, but as architects of catastrophe, sealing away truths too dangerous for mortal hands. Among these visions, one image stood out, a map identical to the one she'd brought with her, glowing with the same symbols. But this version extended beyond the coordinates she'd followed. It spanned entire galaxies, charting pathways to realms unimaginable. At the center of the map lay a single location marked with a sigil she recognized instantly, the Voynich manuscript. Eleanor staggered backward, overwhelmed by the flood of information pouring into her mind. The keeper's voice returned, calm but urgent. "You now hold the key to unlocking untold potential, but also untold peril. The path ahead requires sacrifice. Will you continue alone, or will you bring others into the fold?" Her thoughts raced. Bringing others into this secret carried risks she couldn't ignore. Trust was fragile, and betrayal lurked in even the most loyal hearts. Yet she couldn't shoulder this burden entirely on her own. Her family deserved to know why she'd left them, why she'd risked everything. And Marcus, he had already proven his loyalty, his willingness to fight alongside her. "I won't walk this path alone," she declared, her voice unwavering. "But I'll choose my allies carefully. Humanity has a right to shape its own destiny, even if it means facing the darkness together." The keeper paused, as though weighing her words. Finally, it spoke again. "So be it. But remember, the choices you make will ripple across realities. Act wisely, Eleanor. For once set in motion, the consequences cannot be undone." With that, the vision subsided, leaving her clutching the tome tightly against her chest. The library began to dissolve around her, the infinite shelves collapsing inward until only the pedestal remained. A new doorway materialized before her, framed by the same swirling vortex she'd passed through earlier. Beyond it, she could sense the familiar pull of her world, the stormy island, the ruins, and the life she'd left behind. Taking a deep breath, Eleanor stepped forward, the weight of her decision pressing heavily on her shoulders. As she emerged back onto the island, she found herself face to face with the masked figures who had pursued her. Their leader raised his weapon, aiming directly at her heart. "Hand over the artifact," he commanded, his tone devoid of mercy. Eleanor tightened her grip on the tome, her resolve hardening. "If you want it," she said, meeting his gaze with steely determination, "you'll have to kill me first." The standoff crackled with tension, the fate of worlds hanging precariously in the balance. Behind her, the portal flickered, threatening to close. Time was running out, and Eleanor knew that whatever happened next would determine not just her future, but the future of everything she held dear. The masked leader hesitated, his weapon trembling slightly as he assessed Eleanor's defiance. For a moment, the only sound was the howling wind whipping across the island and the faint hum of the portal behind her. Then, with deliberate slowness, he lowered his gun, but not completely. "You don't understand what you're dealing with," he said, his voice low and laced with warning. "That artifact isn't yours to control." Eleanor stood firm, clutching the tome tightly against her chest. Her heart pounded like a war drum, but her voice betrayed none of her fear. "Neither is it yours," she shot back, her words sharp enough to cut through the tension. "If you think I'm handing over something this powerful to people who operate in shadows, you're wrong." His mask tilted slightly, as if he were studying her more closely. "You're just a librarian," he said, almost mockingly. "What could you possibly know about wielding knowledge like this?" Her jaw tightened, anger flaring beneath her calm exterior. "I may have started as a librarian," she replied, her tone icy, "but I've spent years navigating worlds you can't even imagine. If anyone understands the stakes here, it's me." For a long moment, neither side moved. The standoff stretched taut, like a bowstring pulled to its limit. Then, without warning, the leader raised his hand, signaling his team to lower their weapons. He took a step closer, his movements cautious but deliberate. "Fine," he said, his voice quieter now, almost contemplative. "But mark my words, if you misuse that knowledge, there will be consequences." Before Eleanor could respond, the figures retreated into the mist, disappearing as quickly and silently as they had appeared. She exhaled sharply, her knees threatening to buckle under the weight of adrenaline coursing through her veins. But there was no time to rest. The portal behind her flickered erratically, its edges fraying like smoke caught in a breeze. She didn't need to be told twice, it wouldn't stay open much longer. Clutching the tome, she turned toward the swirling vortex and stepped through once again. When she emerged on the other side, she found herself back in the ruins, alone and disoriented. The oppressive energy of the island seemed muted now, as though the confrontation had drained it of its menace. The artifacts, the obsidian mirror, golden compass, and crystal shard, lay scattered at her feet, their glow dimmed as if they had fulfilled their purpose. Around her, the carvings etched into the stone pulsed faintly before fading entirely, leaving only weathered rock behind. Eleanor sank to her knees, overwhelmed by exhaustion and the enormity of what she'd just experienced. In her arms, the tome remained eerily silent, its shifting pages now still, as though waiting for her next move. She stared at it, her mind racing with possibilities and dangers. The keeper's words echoed in her thoughts, "The choices you make will ripple across realities." She knew she couldn't keep this secret forever. Sooner or later, she would have to decide whom to trust, and how far she was willing to go to protect the knowledge she now carried. But for now, all she wanted was to go home, to hold her family close and pretend, even for a little while, that the world hadn't changed irrevocably. Gathering the artifacts and slipping the tome into her bag, she made her way down the cliffside path toward the waiting boat. The journey back felt surreal, as though she were stepping out of one reality and into another. By the time she reached the mainland hours later, dawn was breaking over the horizon, painting the sky in hues of gold and pink. It was a stark contrast to the stormy darkness she'd left behind. Arriving home, Eleanor paused outside her front door, her hand hovering over the handle. Inside, the house was quiet, save for the faint hum of appliances and the occasional creak of settling wood. Mark and Alex were likely asleep upstairs, oblivious to the chaos she'd endured, and the secrets she now carried. For a moment, guilt threatened to overwhelm her. How could she face them after everything? What right did she have to drag them into this? But then she remembered Marcus's final words, "Finish what we started." This wasn't just about her anymore. It never had been. Stepping inside, she locked the door behind her and set her bag down gently on the kitchen counter. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new decisions, but tonight, she allowed herself a rare moment of peace. As she climbed the stairs, the weight of the tome in her bag pressing heavily against her hip, she stopped outside Alex's bedroom door. His guitar lay propped against the wall, untouched since yesterday. Quietly, she opened the door and peeked inside. Her son slept soundly, his features soft and untroubled. A pang of longing hit her, sharper than any blade. She wanted nothing more than to shield him from the burdens of the world, but deep down, she knew she couldn't. Not anymore. Closing the door softly, she continued down the hall to her own room. Mark stirred as she slipped into bed beside him, his arm instinctively reaching out to pull her close. She nestled against him, letting his warmth anchor her to the present. As sleep finally claimed her, fragments of the visions she'd seen lingered at the edges of her dreams, civilizations rising and falling, stars aligning in patterns too vast to comprehend. Morning came too soon, sunlight streaming through the curtains and waking her with a start. The events of the previous night felt both vivid and distant, like a half-remembered dream. Yet the weight of the tome in her bag reminded her that none of it had been imagined. Sitting up slowly, she glanced at Mark, who was already awake, scrolling through emails on his phone. "You okay?" he asked, noticing her expression. "You look different." Eleanor hesitated, searching for an answer that wouldn't betray her secrets. "Just tired," she said finally, forcing a smile. "Long night." He nodded, accepting her explanation without question. That was the thing about living a double life. The simpler your lies, the easier they were to believe. After showering and dressing, Eleanor joined Alex in the kitchen, where he sat eating cereal while scrolling through music videos on his phone. He looked up briefly as she entered, offering her a distracted smile. "Hey Mom," he said, his tone casual. "Guess what? I got invited to play at a cafe downtown next week." Pride swelled in her chest, momentarily overshadowing her anxieties. "That's amazing, sweetheart," she said, ruffling his hair affectionately. "I'll definitely be there." As the day unfolded, Eleanor found herself slipping back into the rhythm of normalcy, or as close to it as she could manage. She went to work at the library, shelved books, helped patrons, and smiled politely when co-workers commented on her tired appearance. No one suspected the turmoil brewing beneath her composed facade. But as evening approached, she found herself drawn back to the artifacts and the tome. In the privacy of her office, she spread them out on her desk, examining each piece with renewed focus. The map, now inert and lifeless, lay beside them, a reminder of the journey that had brought her here. And the tome seemed to hum faintly, as though aware of her presence. Opening it cautiously, she flipped through the pages, which now displayed text written in a language she somehow understood. Fragments of history, science, and philosophy spilled forth, each revelation more profound than the last. One passage in particular caught her eye. "To wield knowledge is to wield responsibility. To shape destiny is to accept its cost." Eleanor closed the book abruptly, her hands trembling. The implications were staggering. With this tome, she could unlock untold potential, but she could also unleash destruction on a scale humanity might not survive. Who was she to decide such things? And yet, if not her, then who? Her phone buzzed suddenly, startling her. Picking it up, she saw a single message from an unknown number. "They're watching. Be careful." Her stomach churned. Whoever they were, they hadn't given up, not yet. The battle for control of the tome was far from over. Slipping the device back into her pocket, she resolved to take action. She needed allies, people she could trust implicitly. People who understood the risks and were willing to fight alongside her. Pulling out her burner phone, she scrolled through her contacts until she found the name she was looking for. Marcus. It was time to regroup, to strategize. Together, they would figure out how to safeguard the knowledge she'd uncovered, and ensure it was used for good, not evil. Because one thing was certain, whatever happened next, the fate of countless worlds depended on her choices. And Eleanor Grayson was determined not to fail. In the closing moments of Part 2, Eleanor Grayson stepped through the threshold of destiny, emerging from a celestial library with knowledge that could reshape the very fabric of existence. Armed with an enigmatic tome brimming with untold truths, she now stands at the center of a storm, one where shadowy pursuers, ancient secrets, and unimaginable power collide. Her family remains unaware of the firestorm brewing around her, and her closest ally Marcus is missing in action. The weight of the universe rests uneasily on her shoulders as she grapples with the question, what comes next? But this is only the beginning. Stay tuned for Part 3, where secrets deepen, battles ignite, and the line between savior and destroyer grows perilously thin. The truth is out there, but can Eleanor bear its cost? The adventure continues.